There you go.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Dan Bates, President and CEO of the Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, and we have a treat for you today. But before we get there, we're going to do some self-introductions and let you know that our speakers today, we have Matt and Sean from BCRTA. And there are so many things about BCRTA and the services that they offer that I guarantee you have no idea. So that's what today is about. I think you're going to be astounded with everything that they're doing. So again, I'm Dan Bates with the Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, and I think we're going to do self-introductions. So I'm turning it over to Laura.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Merrill with the Greater Hamilton Chamber. We will just go around. Tell me your name and what company you're with. Jill, we will start with you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Jill Cates with Easter Seals Career Connection, and always wanting to learn more about the BCRTA since it's such a valued transit for us and our participants. Thank you for doing this today.
Wonderful. Glad to have you with us. Zach.
Zach Bohannon with Congressman Warren Davidson's office, Butler County Field Rep. Thank you.
Great. Glad to have you with us today. Nancy.
Good morning. I'm Nancy O'Neill with the Greater Hamilton Chamber.
Keyshawn.
Good morning. I'm Sean. I'm the mobility manager here at Butler County RTA.
Wonderful. Keyshawn, would you like to introduce yourself too?
I'm Keyshawn Sims. I work for the Greater Hamilton Chambers.
Wonderful. Elizabeth, are you on yet?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. I'm Elizabeth Reisner with Butler County DD, Employment Service Coordinator. Nice to be here.
Great. Glad to have you with us today. And then Tiffany.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Grubb with the Greater Hamilton Chamber.
And I'm going to just step in a second because I didn't say that we are on Zoom and Facebook Live today. So if you have any questions for the speaker, you can type them in the chat box or just raise your hand and ask. If you are Facebook Live, you can type the questions in. Tiffany will report them to the speaker and get them answered for you. So back to you, Laura.
All right. So Matt, I'll let you take it away.
All right. Thanks so much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Dutkevicz. I'm the Executive Director at Butler County RTA. And I am joined this morning with Sean Cowan, our Mobility Manager here, who has been kind enough to organize a lot of these things. I know stays extra involved with chamber activities and all kinds of community activities, really. We're grateful for the opportunity to be here this morning. So thank you to everybody at the chamber. We love to talk about what we do. We kind of run under the radar. I don't think there's, we've been around for a long time, but don't have probably as big a presence as most transit agencies do in their community. So this is a unique opportunity for us to kind of reach out and tell everybody what we do and to spread the word. So, Sean, this is really informal because it's coffee and conversation. We brought some slides, so you had some pretty pictures to look at this morning, but you're more than welcome to jump in with questions or interrupt. This is a really basic slideshow we use to tell people about who we are and what we do. Excuse me. It kind of it answers most of the basic questions and gives us a jumping off platform to talk about some other things. So we'll kind of just run through the who, what, when, where, why, and how of BCRTA. So I think number one, we're a political subdivision of the state of Ohio. A lot of people think of us as like a nonprofit agency. We certainly are nonprofit, but we are a government entity, a political subdivision, kind of just like a city or a municipality, townships, things like that. We are governed by our own 9-member board of trustees. We're our own fiscal agent. We do rely on some other agencies for some grant funding, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But really, we have county in the name, but we're not a county agency, except to the extent that the Butler County Commissioners do appoint our board of trustees. So that is relevant there. Next slide. So there's Sean pulled up all the staff pictures here. We're a pretty small outfit. We're about 100, probably should be closer to 120 employees. Probably about 80–90% of that is operating employees. That's frontline staff, drivers, dispatchers, maintenance technicians. Who you see here, these are the people who answer the phones and make sure all those other people get paid and everything's organized. So this is our management staff. All their contact information is actually on our webpage. If you ever have a question or run into something and you don't know who to ask, you can always head on over to butlercountyrta.com and you can grab a phone number and email for any of these folks. So we've been around since about 1994. We were established by the commissioners back then under an ORC code that allows commissioners to set up these political subdivisions that are known as regional transit authorities in the code. And our purpose was to support Butler County's quality of life and economic development through public transportation solutions. So that's really how we kind of view our mission and make most of our decisions. Next slide. We did kind of go through our strategic plan. Well, it was late 2019, so kind of rolling into 2020. And of course, pandemic just threw everything on its head. But our boards really set out a vision to be an innovator and implement some smart mobility options and infrastructure to help connect people, especially in employment opportunities, which is really where we spend a lot of our time looking when we're planning new services or looking to see what we can do with the resources we have. Next slide. So here's the interesting stuff. I think this is what most people don't know. The services that BCRTA provides, there are really what I would classify as like 3 different services. One is your traditional fixed route service. You see the big bus on the top left corner there. When you think of transit, I think that's what people think. We operate that on Miami University's campus. We operate it between Middletown, Hamilton, Fairfield, Westchester, Oxford. And we also oversee the city of Middletown's transit system. They actually have their own little tiny transit system that they hire us to manage for them. They are officially their own grantee and an entity of the city, but we step in and provide the transit expertise and keep it running for them. And then we provide a separate service that's kind of a door-to-door, demand response, micro transit. You hear lots of names for it today. And that's what you see the shorter bus or the minivans out doing. All our service is 100% accessible. There's a lift or a ramp on every vehicle. And we break this service into kind of 2 pieces. One we call Bego, and it's a general public, anybody can ride. It's $5 for a trip anywhere you want to go. And that we have an app for that. You can schedule it like Uber or Lyft, or you can call our call center. We still have people who answer the phone, and they'll schedule your rides. That's available 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Friday right now. And we also have another service, which is we call B-Care. It's also known as ADA Complimentary Paratransit Service. And that's a service that we provide in lieu of the fixed route service for people with disabilities. So you have to be certified to use that service. There's an application on our website. You complete it. There's a healthcare professional certification that basically says you have a disability that prevents you from being able to ride that fixed route service, which is free, by the way. So, most people probably want to head in that direction if they can. But if you're not able to ride that bus for whatever reason, if you have trouble reading signs or you have a physical impairment that prevents you from being able to get on or off or get through bus stops or grass or whatever, we provide this complimentary service. And if you are certified to ride that service, we'll provide the Bego style service, but we do that free, like the fixed route, within 3/4 of a mile of any of those fixed route transit lines. So those are kind of the big 3 pieces of service that we offer.
Sorry, I jumped ahead.
No, that's okay. Keep going. I just mentioned the Bigo service is countywide. That's since I think early 2020 we made that change. So $5 anywhere in the county. So we're kind of filling a gap where you can't get an Uber or a Lyft. It's rather difficult in a couple of places. Availability is not good, so we're trying to fill in some of that. As I mentioned, the B-Care service for folks with certified disabilities is operated within 3/4 of a mile of any of those fixed routes. We call them R routes or U routes or P routes or the Middletown color routes. The color routes are what operate within the city of Middletown. The regional routes are what connect kind of our municipalities throughout the county. So those are the longer routes that run between Oxford and Middletown or Middletown and Hamilton. And then those UMP routes, those operate up in Oxford. Oxford actually has pretty dense service because of the student community. There's during the school year, you can probably catch a bus at a stop almost every 10 minutes in a couple of places. That's more akin probably to the kind of service you would see in a much more dense metro area, but our rider statistics are very good when school's in. We do anywhere from 60 to 100 passengers an hour, which is kind of crazy for this part of the country. I see a question down here for where's Bego available, right? That was it. It disappeared. I can click. Oh, how far in advance? Sorry. So that's an interesting question. We used to require at least 2 days notice. We knew that was inconvenient. We got rid of that requirement. You can call us up to the moment you need to go. In fact, I think the app will let you book a trip up to, you have to be at least 5 minutes ahead of time. It's not really, well, at any rate, yeah, you have about 5 minutes to book that trip. The interesting thing is, though, our demand is very high, so the schedule fills pretty quickly. And we do, when we're in peak service in the morning or the afternoon, during the regular school year, we do end up denying some trips because we're at capacity. And it's just the limit of our budget and what we have available. But you can call in advance. You can call up to 2 weeks in advance. You can also book what we call subscriptions. So if you travel every Monday, Wednesday, Friday to the same place, you can book those ahead of time and put them in the system, which of course improves your the chances of actually getting the trip that you'd like to travel on. The longer you wait, obviously that chance may decline a little bit depending on what time you want to go. You could totally use it to go to work every day. $5 starts to add up a little bit on the Bego service, but you could absolutely use it for work. We have plenty of people who do. In fact, I think we're doing about, I want to say, what is it, Sean, 11 to 1,300 job trips monthly right now in the Bigo service. Those are strictly people going to or from work.
That sounds about right. What Luke reports, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the metrics our board watches that they started watching, I think, last year. So that's starting to tick up a little bit because we're really starting to focus on that. So you can do that. We find that a lot of people, Bigo is a good fit for people who need a stopgap. My car broke down and I need to keep getting my paycheck and save my job. So I'm going to use this until I get the car fixed or something. One of the big challenges we have with a lot of folks who are, workforce is a big issue right now. And trying to get people to work. And what we find when we're working with career counselors or folks who, are trying to help people get a new start is that they tend to forget about the transportation piece until the end of the day because we're so reliant on the private automobile. And people tend to come to us and say, okay, I've got a job and I've got a place to live. How do I get between the two? And, with our limited funding, that tends to be an issue for us. We try to encourage people a lot of times to say, go find the job, then look at the transportation and then find the apartment, because that tends to work a little bit better. It's not a reality all the time. But if you're in that kind of position, it certainly works better because we are, I think, the only transit system in the state right now that's offering permanent free rides on the fixed route system. There's some others who are offering it just as a pandemic relief move. Our board had been flirting with the idea before pandemic. When things got ugly and we didn't want to keep handling cash and we were trying to keep, social distancing from passengers, we knew shutting service down wasn't an option because people had to go to work. A lot of the people we move go to distribution centers and a lot of the shipping places. But it was kind of a natural move for us. We discovered that we weren't heavily reliant on fares because of our Miami relationship. So we thought this was a good move to help workers get where they needed to go. Paying fares is just another burden along the way. And it wasn't really helping us as an agency. We were spending a lot of money to collect it and to count it and to deposit what was going on. So we really took a hard look at our efficiency and said, this doesn't make a lot of sense for us. So we're really proud of that decision. We tried to make some noise about it when that decision came out at the end of the year, but free fixed route fares probably haven't been quite as sexy with all the other news and things that have been happening in the last 6 to 12 months. So But we are very proud of that. What else you got, Sean? These are ugly. I don't like this. Next slide.
Sorry.
I'm a little outdated. The other thing we hear from people all the time is how confusing this is. A lot of people do, as somebody asked, rely on transit for their daily commute in a lot of, urban areas. We definitely have people who rely on us for their daily commute, but people are still struggling to learn how to use the service. The good news is we have some great tools. How can you learn what's out there or what's available? The first thing is Google. You can Google everything else in the world. You can Google transit routes too. We feed all of our information directly to Google. We leave it out on the internet. They come and pick it up every time we update it. And you can do a Google search just like you would get directions to drive. There's a little, I think most people don't even notice, there's a little button that looks like a train. If you click on that, you will actually get directions to ride the bus anywhere you want to go. The cool thing about using that is that it will connect you to other systems. So, obviously we have a boundary, but there are ways you can connect to Dayton or to Cincinnati Metro, and Google will certainly show you the way to do that. The other thing I would mention, Buzz Tracker is listed on here, although we're going to be phasing that over the next year. The transit app is really where we're leaning pretty heavily right now. I believe behind Google and Waze, Transit is the third most downloaded navigation app in both the app stores. It's very much like Google Transit, but it's for your mobile phone. You can actually pay your fare in a lot of areas or agencies within that app. And we're looking very hard. You can see in that picture there, you can also get Lyft and I think Uber information in that app as well now. And we're hoping that eventually we're going to be able to integrate our Bego service into this app. We're just waiting for technology to kind of keep up, but that's kind of exciting. So those are two tools that are really great for learning about how to find those rides and how to navigate. In fact, the transit app, if you have your headphones or whatever, will actually, it gives you like navigation directions like your GPS would in the car. It tells you when to get on the bus. It tells you what the next stop is. It tells you what stop to get off at. It's super helpful for folks who don't know where they're going or don't know what they're doing, but also folks with disabilities who may have a visual or hearing impairment. So something to keep in mind. We also have the app for the Bigo service, which is also in the iOS and Android app store. It's called BCRTA Bego. You can download that and use it. And the other thing is, we staff a call center 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. 5 days a week. There is somebody there to answer your question and help you. That's the kind of thing they like to do. That's why they're there. They'll answer those questions and guide anybody who wants in the right direction. What's next, Sean? All right, we
just
talked
more screenshots of the transit app.
Yeah, I love how you crossed out pay your fare there after this was made. It changed later.
I actually just got updated signs yesterday.
Okay, so you can update that, but there's a plug for the transit app. It really is a great tool. You can see in the screenshots here how it shows you what the route is, where you are, gives you options for traveling. And like I said, it is supported with BCRTA Tank and Metro. Like I said, you don't have to pay a fare on our bus, but if you did want to go to Northern Kentucky or Cincinnati, you could pay your fare with the app. So here's just a screenshot of how the Google Transit works. If you look, you see we have the little the car is highlighted. I don't know why the car is highlighted. The bus or the train should be highlighted. That's weird. Probably, oh, you know what? This is two screenshots. The animation got killed. That's all right. Anyway, if you look to the window on the right, that's what the transit version looks like. So you can see it gives you the directions. The little dotted lines are for walking. It tells you how long the ride is, how long the wait is. Super handy. In the Bego app, there's a picture of what you're looking for in the app store. Very similar to Uber or Lyft. It'll tell you when your bus is coming, when it's on its way. What's next? Oh, lots of website updates. There's also a trip planner on there. It's really just plugged into Google. It's the same thing, but if you're looking for some information, that's a quick way to get what you need. That website just got updated last year. That was another fun thing we did and announced, and it got drowned out in coronavirus news. So this is where we start getting into some budget limitations for our agency. 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. is really our peak, Monday through Friday. We don't offer a lot of weekend service right now, except in Middletown or Oxford. Middletown does operate 8 to 4:30 on Saturday. And when school's in, you can ride a bus in Oxford like 22 hours a day. It's crazy. They're pretty good service up there. What's next? So here's the interesting part about this. The reason you don't hear much about BCRTA and why, we're probably don't make as much of a splash or noise or have as much service as you would see in Cincinnati or Dayton is because we don't have any dedicated local funding. Most transit agencies or RTAs within the state of Ohio have a local tax levy. We do not have one of those. So everything we do is scrappy, thrifty, entrepreneurial. We're being creative and leveraging federal grants with local money revenue. Miami University pays for most of the service that they receive, which allows us to draw our federal grants that we receive from the Federal Transit Administration. So important to remember, local funding can be a real key. We've been pretty thrifty and been working without it for a long time. We do receive some federal grants. We get about $2 million a year from the Federal Transit Administration through USDOT. We're allowed to use a portion of it for operating funds, but they really prefer we use it for capital. They provide 80% for capital, 50% for operating. I will say, there's been an influx of coronavirus support money, which we are happily putting to use. We weren't collecting fares. We kept all of our employees on the payroll. There were no layoffs during pandemic, but business is back and it's busy. So we're putting things out there. The other thing I should mention is, one of the side effects of not having any dedicated local funding for the last 20 some years is that we've never been able to offer group health insurance to our employees, which I think probably seems a bit laughable to some people. It was just kind of a model that we built, living in the world we do now with the labor market we have now. It's not really an option. So, we're very grateful for some of that coronavirus relief because it's going to help us get some health benefits for our employees off the ground this year, which without it, we would never have been able to do, which is going to be able to help us retain staff and be able to continue to provide the type of services that we do. The other interesting thing about funding and how we make all this happen is really our partnership with Miami University, City of Middletown, the Veterans Service Commission, and the Board of Developmental Disabilities. Miami and City of Middletown are really good partners who have some of their own funding, who invest it in transit. Those investments allow us to leverage additional federal funding and really make sure that dollars hit the street in Butler County and provide service at the front line. I think I mentioned to you, we have like 100, should be closer to 120 employees, but really only 15 to 20 of those are administration. We have very skinny overhead. When dollars come into transit in Butler County, they go on the road and they are getting people where they need to go. As far as BCDD and the Veterans Service Commission, we have really great contract relationships with these folks. And we generate some local revenue, which again helps us in the funding scenario, but we're also providing quality service for those organizations who, I don't want to speak for them, but I think rely pretty heavily on us and have been very happy with the service they've had. They've renewed contracts with us for years. So next slide. I guess I can stop and breathe too if anybody has a question. I've probably been giving anybody time to actually unmute or get a word in edgewise. I'll keep talking for a little bit, but feel free to interrupt. So this is a new slide, Sean. You must have put this one in at some point. Where does the money go? You can see, what's going on here. We normally provide over 600,000 rides a year on curb to curb service. A lot of that is at Miami University, but it's also throughout the county on those regional routes. We average 35,000 trips on that curb to curb or Bego service. And actually, I think that number is going to increase pretty dramatically as we're able to put drivers on the road. Like I said earlier, we've been denying some trips. We have more demand than we can handle. And I think that number is going to continue to rise. That number there on 80 employees is probably starting to be a little outdated. As I mentioned, we have demand we can't address, and we probably have funding to, hire 90 or 120 employees. We're just having trouble finding them right now. I think a lot of people also don't know, we provide express service to downtown Cincinnati. We just pay somebody else to do it. You see the Cincinnati Metro bus there in the picture. That is the 42X that runs from Meyer and Westchester to downtown Cincinnati. We provide the funding to make that happen and have a service contract with Cincinnati Metro to operate that. It actually, before pandemic, was the most used service I think we had, competing pretty closely with some services up in Oxford. And we have some kind of exciting news. We're going to be partnering with City of Middletown to actually expand the service and make it better. We'll be extending it from Westchester all the way up to Middletown. We'll actually be bringing it in-house, so we'll be operating it ourselves. We are getting ready. I think City of Middletown already passed the resolution at the city level, but we will be purchasing some commuter coaches like you would see in a lot of urban centers, Cleveland, Akron, and we'll be operating pretty nice service between Middletown, Liberty, Westchester, and downtown Cincinnati. So the demand for that is already coming back. We did suspend this route for a little bit, during pandemic because nobody was commuting. So we put it on the shelf for a while, but it's been back since late March, April. And the ridership continues to grow again. So we're expecting strong demand to be back, but we'll also be looking, not just at traditional commuter patterns, but what about people who work in medical, like uptown Cincinnati or somewhere, maybe some of your less traditional but growing work centers. So we'll be taking a peek at that stuff. Annual budget's about $6 million a year. It's probably going to be more like $7 million going into next year as we add health insurance. We're also building a multimodal facility in Oxford. So that'll be kind of exciting. We're in the design phase right now. We have some federal funding for it. That'll be again, with an eye to efficiency, we'll be sharing that facility with the school bus operation up there in Miami to kind of leverage some synergies. It'll allow us some indoor parking to expand the useful life of our buses so they last a little bit longer. It'll provide some indoor waiting space for our bus operation, any regional bus operations, and also it will be next door to the proposed Amtrak platform that Oxford, City of Oxford and Miami University are working on. That is moving forward as well. We're working very closely with them that although they are not the same projects, again, with an eye to efficiency, we're planning on leveraging the infrastructure of the bus station so we don't need to build extra things, but there will be resources and amenities for those rail riders as well. Oh, and Sean's proud of this one. We are the first transit agency in Southwest Ohio to hire a mobility manager too. So Sean, I'm going to take a break and let you talk about what you do. I'm sure most of the people know, but it never hurts. Why is it unique that we hired a mobility manager?
Well, it's becoming a bigger deal. There are 38 mobility managers now in the state of Ohio, and we have a really good working group. Mobility management was created to help serve the underserved population, to help people find a more transportation options that cater to them. More personalized, more individualized of what works for them as opposed to what is just, out there. So we help connect a lot of people, to downtown Cincinnati, to jobs, answers a lot of questions, help overcome, the barrier of transportation for low income residents. A lot of us travel train, although that's not required, but a lot of us do travel train on public transportation.
What's travel training?
I'm sorry?
What's travel training?
So travel training, I say I'm sorry, because I think most of you guys probably know this, so I apologize. Travel training is when we teach somebody how to utilize the public transportation system. So a lot of people are a little overwhelmed. I don't know how to do it. I've never done it before. How difficult is it? So, anybody can utilize the service, but it is geared more towards elderly and individuals with disabilities. And we create a customized travel plan based on their abilities and teach them how to use public transit. It has been an amazing experience, especially when you give somebody the option to move about their community when they've never had that before. when they have independence, can go to school, can go to work, can, go shopping. So it's been really great to be able to do that and to work with individuals who, like I said, don't necessarily or would not necessarily have that option before. So, it's kind of a broad role. I work a lot with, within the city, with the Board of DD, with Easter Seals, and I do a lot of public outreach, just educating people on the services that we have, and not just our services, but other transportation options within the community that might work out better than ours. We are by far the most, cheapest way to go, for lack of a better word, which works a lot for people. So that's been very exciting to, have that on board, that people can travel throughout the county for only $5. And then also a lot with the homeless shelters, trying to, get them employed and work with them, and being able to have free transportation has been a real game changer. So it's been an exciting year for us, I think, in that respect. And so we are certainly excited to be able to, share all that additional information. All services for mobility management is free. So if you have anybody who is, needs transportation, doesn't know how to get someplace, trying to figure out what to do to get to medical appointments or whatever the case may be, I am here to assist with that and to help provide them with some options. I think that's it in a nutshell.
Covered a lot.
Covered a lot. There's a lot.
Thanks, Sean. What's the next slide?
Oh, sorry. I was chatting.
No, that's okay.
Why we do it?
Why we do it. The slide's in here because I feel badly we have to say this sometime, but I found out talking to people, we do have to say it. Everybody's not able to drive a car. Because of age, disability, desire, everybody doesn't drive a car, can't own a car. I have a board member who says it very well. There's a large population of people who can afford to have an apartment or a car, but not both. I think it's pretty easy to choose what the priorities are, and we try to fill that gap and help those folks to make sure they can take the next step. Public transit is inherently efficient. It does cost money to operate it and make it safe, but at the end of the day, our objective is to put it in places where we're helping the largest number of people, and we're moving as many people as possible for the lowest cost possible. So I mentioned, we have pretty skinny overhead, but we're also taking a good look at what's efficient. In fact, I will say our route system's a little goofy because it's kind of followed the money over the last 10, 15 years. We will be doing a large study later this year. We're getting ready to go out to bid to have somebody help us take a look at all of our routes and kind of resize and reappropriate everything to make sure that we're really sticking true to that mission and putting service where it's needed and where it's most efficient. So we're excited for that to happen because I think it is going to, there'll be some changes with all the development and logistics and jobs that will help. Public transit gets people to work and school. I mentioned that's our focus. Public transit drives economic development. To the extent we can get people to work and, employers aren't having to invest in that turnover and all the problems that are associated with not having employees come to work, there's room for reinvestment. And I think, I forget what it is, but the American Public Transit Association has some very good stats and backed up data on that investment. And I think it's like $3 to $4 for every dollar that's invested in public transit usually ends up coming back to communities in one form or another for that public transit investment. The other thing to mention is that public transit brings federal dollars to our area. I think a lot of people, don't know that the U.S. Department of Transportation and Federal Transit Administration has, they have two kinds of programs. They have formula funds and discretionary programs. Discretionary programs, obviously, you compete based on your merits. We've been successful in some of those, not all, but they also have formula programs where literally they calculate a formula, and as a transit system, we get a bucket of money based on a formula. That money is appropriated and dedicated to transit. If we don't use it, it goes to public transit somewhere else. We hate to see that kind of money leave the area if it doesn't have to. I think Butler County RTA, we've been pretty resourceful and thrifty, so much so that we make sure those dollars hit the road and are helping people get where they need to go, so much so that we've kind of gotten to the point where if some of our neighbors or even folks at ODOT have money that's potentially lapsing or could be diverted because it's not going to be used, they call us. Because we've been very efficient and functional at putting those dollars to work where they need to go. So we're very proud of that. There's a lot of people who I think don't manage some of their public money all that well sometimes as far as transit systems go, but we have a reputation within the state and also within our regulatory region at Federal Transit Administration for being good stewards and making sure that happens. So what's next? Oh, all the resources, lots of resources. There's all kinds of stuff on here. I say call Sean if you need a reminder on this. You can call me. What's next? There's all kinds of resources on our webpage. We love to talk to people about what we do. We love to speak in front of your groups. There's my phone number, the customer service number. If you want to talk to Sean, her phone number is on the website too. She's just shy, but we love to give out information and resources about what we do. If we're not helping people, we don't have a purpose to be here. So it's that simple.
And that's it.
That's everything. I talked a lot.
You did good. There's a lot of information.
Matt, I have a question.
Sure.
First of all, I'm going to make a statement for everybody. In case they don't realize, if they download the Explore Hamilton app and click on resources, the first thing that comes up is the City of Hamilton, where to park. And the second thing is BCRTA. So you can schedule a ride if you can't, for some reason, find the BCRTA app or their website or whatever. If you have downloaded Explore Hamilton, it's on the resource page, very easy to maneuver. So that's not my question. My question is, I'm still astounded with this $5 ride thing since you implemented. I can't believe it. And, my question is, at what point do you max that out? And should we, as a chamber, be marketing that much heavier than we do? Because I go to a lot of meetings and I hear, especially people in maybe more disconnected neighborhoods, well, I can't go there and I can't go here because I don't have transportation. $5 is cheaper than having a car. It really is, even if you took it to work every day. It's certainly cheaper than Uber. It's just, I don't know how we get the word out. The $5 just astounds me.
Yeah. So we did a postcard campaign with some help from City of Oxford. There's probably several of you, if you live in the county, you got one of those little postcards. We push a lot of information on Facebook, but if you're not in that venue, you don't get it. Word of mouth reference is really the best thing we have. And we are happy for you to push it. The thing I will say is, we love people to communicate with us because, as I've mentioned, that service is kind of at peak right now. When school's in, if you try to book a ride 5 minutes before, during let's say 7 to 9 a.m. or 3 to 5 p.m., you might have a hard time getting in. And that makes us sad. We don't like that, but it means that people are using the service. It also means that, we need to find ways to dedicate more resources to those types of things. We do record all of those denials. If you ask for a trip and we can't provide it, it goes into our database and we use it for planning purposes. So we know where we're missing them. We're also putting resources into expanding that service as we need to. Obviously there certainly is a cap at some point. I would say we're not there yet. Our biggest issue right now is hiring. If you want to talk about Bego, talk about jobs at BCRTA too. We raised the wage back in January to $15 an hour for starting employees. You do not need a CDL to start in our small bus or minivan operation. We will train you to get a CDL if you want one. We're hoping our board is going to talk and make a decision on health insurance next week at our board meeting. So hopefully that will be something that's online before the end of the month. And I will tell you, the staff has been working on pricing that so it is affordable for folks who are making $15 an hour. There was no point in implementing that if it wasn't helpful to our entry-level employees. Obviously, like I've told you a couple times now, most of our staff is operators. And it moves fairly quickly. What's the cap on driver wage right now? I think you can make up to $17, $19. I know none of the right people for that question are on here, but they're good jobs. There's public employees retirement system involved with them. We have a generous PTO plan. So if people are looking for jobs, you know, we would love to have them. We would hire lots of people right now if we could find them. I see Zach shaking his head. We're going to jump on that train. We are right there with everybody else who can't hire anybody. And it's been a problem for us for years, but it's become markedly worse since probably March of last year. So, and we're not seeing as many people come back as we'd like, you know, but we're working on that piece. I have a couple of management positions open too right now. So there's some different stuff going on, but it's a very long answer to your question, Dan, but advertise it all you want. And if somebody says they're having trouble getting through, call me, call Sean. We would love to know about it. There's not always workarounds, but sometimes there are, you know, but also knowing about that helps us address those issues and make sure we're putting resources where they need to go.
So I have another question then. If someone tries to schedule a trip and it's denied, that's denied immediately, right? So they're not like sitting there waiting, thinking that there's a bus coming and it's not.
Yes, correct. In fact, the operations people, since they're not on the Zoom, I can say this. People actually have pretty good luck with the app. It's not quite as smart at denying some of the trips. So if you're really looking to get in, our call takers are a little more, they like to negotiate and put trips where they know they'll fit. The system is a little more forgiving at taking things. It will deny them, but if you want to download the Bego app, you can get a trip a lot of times. And it does take, the other thing I should mention, it takes a credit card right now. We also have a second option to pay that's not part of that app. It's called Easy Fare. And we will be rolling out over the next couple of months. It's not quite ready yet, it's really close. But Easy Fare is a program that will also take credit card, but it's also going to help us with a lot of unbanked folks. It will at some point allow us to have partner agencies who can give tickets to their constituents and allow BCRTA to bill the agency at the end of the month for those tickets that they hand out. Right now, the way Easy Fare works is you have to have a smartphone and you scan it on the bus and we reconcile it so that we know that person took the trip. We realize that a lot of unbanked people may not have cell phones, or more likely just don't have data to operate them. So we are working on an option to have a smart card that can be read, and we can allow those partner agencies to perhaps hand out those smart cards to hand out media to those folks and let them swipe that or scan that on the bus. We're not quite there yet, but it's coming. The other cool thing about that is those smart cards or smartphone things will also allow people to load their accounts at like 7-Elevens and dollar stores at some point. So you could potentially go load up your Bego card on payday at the Dollar General, and then just scan your phone or your card on the bus to ride Bego. So we're getting there. Those things are coming. We're both feet in the deep end on tech at BCRTA. So trying to make, again, the objective not to just be cool, but to help people get where they need to go and overcome some of these barriers. So
I have a question. I was wondering if you or Sean could elaborate more on the door-to-door subscription route. You were saying if you go to work at the same exact time, you're picked up at the same exact time, that it would be something that they could get a little more long-term. Is that what I understand?
I'm so sorry, Matt.
Okay.
Yes, Jill, I will tell you right now, and this is the only reason why I'm interjecting, because this is what I deal with on a daily basis, is that if you are a paratransit eligible client, you can do a subscription service. But because of our driver shortage right now, they are not doing subscription service for general public.
Okay.
That is new because of our driver shortage. So obviously we hope to get back to that. But right now they have suspended that for general public. And I'm not sure, Matt, if you knew or, so I just wanted to make sure.
That must be new because
And I was wondering if, we at Easter Seals and our program here, we have a lot of internships that our participants work. And sometimes we try to work out a schedule that we think is going to be most compatible with BCRTA. So we're like, okay, we know you're going to be able to get a ride to and from work if you have this time slot. Like, is there a better time slot to be picked up in the morning or picked up in the afternoon? What are your high volume hours that are really hard to get a scheduled trip door to door?
Are you? I don't want to interrupt.
I haven't looked in a while, but traditionally it's about 7 a.m. to like 9 a.m.
Okay.
and 3 p.m. to about 5:30 p.m. I will tell you, particularly, we try to get this word out too for folks who, particularly elderly populations who need to go shopping or do something. Go in like mid-morning. We always have availability like between 10 and 1. And nobody seems to want to go anywhere during that time. I don't know why. We've tried incentivizing it and dropping the cost, and it made it really confusing, but nobody wants to go. If you have people who need to run short errands or do things, I guarantee you can have a trip any day you want between 10 and 1.
That's probably still pretty true. Yeah.
Yeah. And after 6 p.m., it depends on the day. Some days are busy, some days aren't.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, I'm going to jump back to your question. We are taking to our board next week. We had put out a marketing RFP.
Yeah.
So we're going to do some major marketing, which we have never done before. And so the Bego campaign is one of the things that we're going to be touching on to be able to get that word out, in addition, to our fixed route services. And of course, we're going to do a big employment campaign, and it's going to run over the course of the next couple of years. But the agency that we selected, I mean, we'll definitely be reaching out to the Chamber of Commerce and getting some feedback on, what that information is going to look like and what our tagline is going to be. And so we're super excited about those projects, and hopefully that will help, spread the word. But like I said, we've never been able to do that before.
We'd be glad to partner with you on that. It's amazing that if something is bad news, it spreads like wildfire throughout the, entire city, even if it's not true. And, something that you guys have been offering now for quite some time that is spectacular opportunity for people, for mobility and to get to work and all that type of thing. And it's a struggle.
Yeah.
It's like, geez, every time I mention, it's like, I didn't know that. So,
Yeah.
Well, and
we really try.
Part of the scope of that project, Sean, right, is like an employer toolkit package.
Yes.
Specifically aimed at helping employers leverage our services to get employees in the door. I know we've tried a couple of programs, and we've just been looking for some good employer partners, but a chamber could certainly help us leverage that, particularly for when we were talking to some logistics and operations folks, getting people in the door and getting them on their feet seemed to be a big issue. And after they got a couple paychecks, they kind of, learned to fly, so to speak, and we were less critical to the equation. But getting things off the ground and getting people in the door seemed to be a big issue. So we're happy to help there, and I know we're going to be aiming a lot of our marketing efforts in that vein to make sure that we're helping there, since that's one of our priorities.
I think the other opportunity, I know you partner with them already, but the other opportunity is adult education courses, in the evenings, like Butler Tech and other opportunities like that, because that's
I'm
what
working on that too.
Yeah, I have no way to get there. I'm like, well, you actually do. So
You've got a lot of ways. That's actually a fixed route too. So there's multiple options on that one.
We also have, Sean is working on, and she hasn't updated me in a while, but I'm going to throw her out here on this one. We've been working on some curriculum that could not only be delivered by our mobility management staff like Sean, but also be shared with post-secondary education institutions or high school students, things like Project Search or things like that. So we're trying to build that and kind of create a standard curriculum that could be handed out just to kind of learn the basics of transit and navigation. So I don't know. I know that's kind of in its infancy still, isn't it, Sean?
It definitely is, but it's moving for sure. It's just finding, like we said, Easter Seals Project Action is probably our greatest partner in that and getting those materials created. And so we have been discussing and working and trying to figure out what those pieces are going to look like. And it'll be very, obviously specified to Butler County. Not just, there'll be some general curriculum to it, but then there will also be.
What's the capacity of your large bus, and does it have internet access?
You can seat 28 or 29 people depending on the bus. You can probably put 50 or 60 people in it. They have wide aisles with rails. In fact, that's what we do a lot of times at Miami. We pack people behind the line and they hang on, and there's 60 people in that bus for a short ride. They do not have Wi-Fi right now. That's in our board strategic plan. And we're in that process because we put the routers on the bus, and they do have Wi-Fi, but it's not public yet. It's we're getting our operational end off the ground. Obviously, there's a lot of security and operational components that are involved with that. So that's the network we're working on right now. Once we get that finished, which should happen this fall, then we're talking about rolling out public Wi-Fi on the bus. So
I asked if for a purely selfish reason that actually could be beneficial to you. It would be great to have a board meeting go on a bus route.
Yeah.
And, we have 34 board members, some of the largest employers in Butler County. I think it'd be a great education for them and a unique experience.
We love to do education events. Sean loves to do education events. Yeah, absolutely. That's something we could certainly talk about because I think there probably is an opportunity there. So I should mention, we did buy some equipment that's getting implemented later this summer. So it'll bring greater accuracy to those apps. And in fact, the transit, you can see where the bus is right now in the transit app. You can't yet on Google, but that'll probably be launched later this summer. So you'll actually be able to see where all the buses are in real time. That's available on some apps right now, not everything, but it will roll out everywhere this fall because of some new equipment we're buying. The other thing we will be purchasing, we're going to put some kind of like passenger counters. It's like a laser on the bus that tells us how many people get on and off at every stop, but that will also allow us to share capacity on the vehicle through those apps. So when you look up and you see the buses coming, if the bus is extra crowded, you'll be able to see that ahead of time. So that'll be kind of a cool new feature. I know a lot of larger agencies implemented that during the pandemic. We're not quite that fast and we had to dig up some funding to make this happen, but that'll be coming online later this fall. And I think actually you'll see probably some better accuracy in the real-time information as well.
I have one other question for you, just for selfish reasons. There are so many of our individuals that live in multi-apartment areas that I don't know if they're subsidized or what, but I'm really amazed that you don't have fixed bus routes right outside these apartment complexes where there's just multitude of people that live there. And you're thinking, especially in Hamilton, why, like, for example, we have probably 2 or 3 participants that live on Gordon Smith Boulevard out there in Hamilton. And the closest bus to get a fixed route is like 3 miles away. And I just found that shocking with all those apartments there. I didn't know if there was a reason demographically or why you didn't have a fixed bus route stop right there.
Yeah, it's about funding. City of Hamilton had a municipal systems very similar to what Middletown had 30 years ago. Local Hamiltonians probably remember the blast, or even before that, I think they just called it the bus. There was very traditional bus service in Hamilton years and years ago, and for a variety of reasons, there ended up being some type of a labor dispute, and the city said, forget it, we're done. They got out of it. It's actually kind of how BCRTA was born. It was just a municipal system, and they had some special status as a transit recipient with the feds. And when they went away, that's what kind of created the opportunity to say, well, wait a minute, you're giving away federal money. Maybe somebody else should get that money. And that's a very high level summarized version of that story. But the city pulled the funding away. And they put funding into on and off in the past. And my personal opinion, for what it's worth, they kind of had like 2 or 3 day a week service. And I can tell you that never works.
Yeah.
Transit's one of these things where people try to budget it down and they're like, we like that plan, but it's just too expensive. Let's give it a haircut. And when you do that, you destroy the functionality of the system.
Yeah.
It's not that we like to spend lots of money, but we know, either you provide the system that works for people or it just doesn't. And there's no point in spending money and wasting it on a half the system because it
Right.
doesn't work. It's not a full network. And so that's why that never worked. I think we're getting to the point, BCRTA, as I mentioned earlier, doesn't have any dedicated local funding. So there's no tax revenue coming in from anybody. The county does not put any money in our accounts. Everything we get, we either make because we provide service or we receive federal grants. We do get a little bit of money from ODOT, although Ohio has a notoriously terrible reputation for supporting public transit. I will say they've been really good for the last 2 biennial budgets. It's gotten much better. Probably not where it needs to be, but far improvement. But it's still only like 2 or 3% of our annual budget. But anyway, that's really the problem. We just don't have the funding. It costs us about probably $250,000 a year to run one bus every day, or 5 days a week, about 18 hours a day, which is a pretty thrifty cost actually. If you take our cost and compare it to any of our peers, I think that's actually a pretty good number, but it's still expensive. And it's when you have enough people riding it, it's efficient. But we have to look at some of the statistics and everything. And right now, we're just capped. $6 million is what we can draw from the feds and what we can make on revenue contracts. We have commitments to provide service to the veterans and to Miami, and that's what makes the system work. So we have to do those things, and we just don't have any extra to do these other things. We'd love to, but it would require probably some local commitment that just hasn't been there, to be very honest. So that's something that our board can talk about, but truthfully, if there's not community support, it's not something they're going to, I think, probably chase down. Now, there are conversations about it and how that might work if it ever happened, but it's just planning. What I will say is I think there are, with ODOT being a little bit more generous and the federal stimulus, I think we're going to have an opportunity to pilot some Hamilton service probably in the next year when Spooky Nook opens. We're going to wait for that big planning study I said we were going to do at the end of this year. We're going to wait for some of those recommendations. And you heard it here first. I'm teasing it, no promises, but I think probably some level of Hamilton service will come out of that for at least, I'm going to say 2 to 3 years. We don't like to run anything less than that because we don't get a good picture of how successful it is in less time. But I would be shocked if service didn't do well in Hamilton just because of the demographics, the density. It's much like Middletown. Middletown has a very successful, efficient system. With Spooky Nook opening up in Hamilton, I see no reason why it wouldn't do well there. We would probably do something more resident shopping, job focused during weekdays, and we would take those resources and we would reassign them on weekends to address the Spooky Nook, probably the congestion and crowding issue, because that's another thing we've been watching for a long time is, they talk about these big tournaments they're bringing in. There's only one place there are parking spaces for all those people, and it's either at their hotels or at Spooky Nook, and not any of the restaurants on Main Street where they might like to dine or shop or do any of those things. And so I think we see kind of a critical piece for ourselves, again, from that economic development perspective, that we want to make sure business thrives and people do well and that people can get their employees and that our visitors can get around without being frustrated and being stuck on Main Street in their car, hunting for parking spaces. So I expect there will be something there. We'll have funding for a little bit of it, but we'll probably have to put some heads together and get some local support for it to continue into the future.
That brings up another question for me. Regarding Spooky Nook, is there any thought of having much smaller vehicles for the $5 ride option, that could transport, a family or a team or something from point A to point B on weekends?
So we have a transit planner on staff, and that's something we've talked about a lot. The initial conversation was we need a parking shuttle and then all these other things. And, we've been doing transit for a while. Everybody here has a reasonable amount of experience. And based on the demographics of the people we believe will be coming, they're all going to bring a car. So if they have a choice to take the car, that's going to be their first choice. So we're not going to try and replace those things. If they want to leave town and there's parking somewhere, they're not riding the bus. Parking, truthfully, if you can walk and you're able-bodied and you think it's faster to walk, that's probably what they're going to do. So that's really what's led us to we need to figure out how to get people where they need to go, where they can't take their car. That's really what I think our focus is going to be. And we've talked, the city asked, well, what about smaller buses? Well, again, if you can walk or you can drive your car, you're probably not going to take the bus, which leads us to the conclusion that if we have smaller crowds and people that would fit in smaller buses, they're not going to ride them, they're going to take their car. So probably what we're going to be dealing with is a congestion situation where there's so many people in town and we have such a congestion problem, which may not be every weekend. It might just be big tournament weekends or something, but that's probably, based on planning factors and our experience, where we see where the demand probably will be. It's going to be crowded weekends where people need to go places where they can't park their car. So for that reason, I think, what you asked about, Dan, we're probably not worried too much about that because, again, I think a lot of the places we might do Bego, they take their car. And if it's a congestion issue and we have a busy weekend, putting a bunch of smaller vehicles on the road isn't going to solve our congestion problem, right? And it's not going to be as cost efficient for us. It makes more sense to put the big shuttle out and let people load up and take them down Main Street and jump off where they want to go or what they need to do. And then people who are leaving town, you can get in your car and go and do that. Now there's traffic considerations in there for the city too, but that's kind of where our planning efforts have led us. It's a good question.
Well, Matt, that's a lot of information, but it's really good. I think it's super important. Your service seems super easy to use and just getting the word out to everyone who needs to know. So we are glad to be a partner with you to help with whatever you need. Any last questions for Matt? Awesome. So we'll be back for Coffee and Conversation on June 22nd. We're going to feature the Minority Business Assistance Center of Cincinnati, and they're going to be hosting a panel discussion to discuss unique opportunities for funding and other support for minority businesses in the city of Hamilton. So please come back and join us in a couple weeks. And again, Matt, Sean, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for the platform. And we'll want to make sure our DBE liaison is at your roundtable.
That's what I just wrote down.
Yeah, she will want to be there because we hire a lot of those folks, but we have trouble finding them. So.
Yep, definitely. So, all right, everyone, we will see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.